So today I want to talk about, can you be too emotional? The answer is no. At least I don't think so. And let me tell you why. So when I was growing up, my mom used to always say to me, "What is wrong with you? Why are you so emotional?" And she would say it to me a lot. And I remember going through my youth, looking at my own mother and looking at her as if she was this stoic woman and thinking that, wow, her stoicism made her just so strong. And I wish I could just be so strong like her and so stoic, so that I didn't seem like I was out of control and, crying at, stuff you shouldn't cry at and whatever. And I can honestly tell you, I went 40 years of my life thinking that having emotions and being, too emotional was a bad thing. I really did. And that there was something wrong with me. It's really what I thought. Something wrong with me, too emotional. And that I couldn't get my emotions under control in situations that I should be able to get my emotions under control. One of the things where my emotions will get out of whack is in times that you would think shouldn't. Like, for example, I think almost every time I've gone to the DMV, I've cried at some point. Now, it took me getting to the point of learning I was an empath to understand what the hell was going on. But what I can also tell you is it wasn't until I discovered I was an empath, in fact, discovering even what an empath was. I never even heard of that until about 4.5 years ago. And when I was first told that I was an empath, I thought somebody meant that I had empathy. And it was kind of that headspace where I went, well, don't most people have empathy? But I was like, okay, just Google it. So I did. I Googled, what is an empath? And I was really surprised to see what came back and how it was talking about emotional energy and emotional energy of others, and how empaths are basically a magnet for other people's emotions. So if you're feeling an emotion, that's one thing. But if somebody's feeling an emotion and that energy kind of radiates onto you, and then you're feeling it, you feel this extra energy that's like, ah. And I remember when I found out I was an empath, I cried. I cried because I realized that for 40 years, there wasn't actually something that was wrong with me. And I had been carrying that belief about myself for 40 years. There's something wrong with me. I'm too emotional, right? That's what I've been told. Even around, my significant others, they look at me like, why is she crying in these weird situations? And I wouldn't be able to explain it. And it was only when I started understanding, how an empath works that I was like, yeah, this is exactly what's going on with me. And understanding the situations that I was in and why I would be crying in situations I never even felt sad. I was like, I'm not sad. Why are tears flying out of my eyeballs right now? And it also really took me to a space where I had to analyze my own mother. And I also changed my view on my mother, where I once thought that her stoicism was her strength. I realized her stoicism was actually a weakness. And that when you look at people that don't feel, they basically fall into one of three categories, okay? Either one, they have some underlying psychosis, like they are a sociopath or a psychopath. Two, they're dead. Dead people don't feel. Or three, they are suppressing emotions deeply within themselves because they intentionally do not want to feel the pain, the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment that's associated with the things that they otherwise think. And so it's an intentional way of stuffing it down and holding it tightly so that they don't actually have to feel that pain. And when I realized that, I realized that, my mother was not the strong woman that I thought she was. I realized that she was actually kind of mentally weak in that way because she was incapable of feeling and incapable of allowing herself to feel. And she ended up taking a lot of antidepressants, to deal with some things that she clearly was thinking about that she did not want to feel. And, that's quite a mind shift when you realize that having emotions actually isn't a bad thing. And when you go through realizing that you're an empath and you're supposed to feel, and that feeling is part of life, and in some ways, feeling, I think, keeps you alive, right? When you have fear, it's a survival mechanism, right? And it sends signals to the body to tell you things. When you cry, it tells you you're sad, and you're sad about something, and that also elicits a certain type of response and reaction, towards you. So when I went through, learning about the empath, the other thing that I realized that I felt some sadness about was that neither myself nor my mother knew I was an empath. In fact, I'm 100% confident that my mother didn't even know what an empath was. And that if she had known what an empath was, I think she would have treated me differently. I really do, based off of some of our experiences in the past. And she also was a nurse, so she did actually care, for people, and she cared for me, but she just didn't understand. And one of the reasons why I feel she would have operated differently if she had known that I was an empath, and if she had then learned about what an empath is and what's going on, is because of a situation that happened to me from a physical standpoint. So when I was 14 years old, I was playing basketball, and we'd had like over 100 sprints that day in practice in the morning. And I ended up after practice, I was walking up the stairs in school to my locker. And this is actually before the bell, so nobody's around, right? And I had this moment where all of a sudden my body was paralyzed. Like I could not physically take another step up the stairs. And I basically collapsed on the stairs and scooted my whole way with my hands all the way back down the stairs. By the time I got to the bottom of the stairs, I was able to walk again. I walked to the nurse's office. By the time I got there, I was like, you need to call my mom. There's something wrong. And I was crying because I didn't know what was going on with me, right? What had just happened? This is scary. And of course the nurse is like, are you sick? I'm like, no, but something else is wrong. And I told her what happened, and she gives me this, and I screamed at the nurse. So she called my mom. So I talked to my mom. My mom came and got me. And the first thing she did was we immediately went to a doctor's office. My stepdad was a doctor, so we had some pull. That's privilege. And got into an orthopedic. The first question he asked me was, okay, do you feel any pain? Do you feel pain normally? And I remember at the time kind of struggling with that question, because a lot of times, you've been taught to ignore your pain, physical pain even. And I had to think about it. And I was like, well, my knees, my hips, my back. And he's like, all right. So we did x-rays on my knees, my hips, and my back. And we found that there was nothing wrong with my knees. There was nothing wrong with my hips, but he found the problem in my back. And at that point, he said, you will never do gymnastics again. And you're going to have to start doing these specific stretches to, make you feel better and, be able to work through it. But also there's nothing we can do for you. You're just going to have chronic pain for the rest of your life. So deal with it. And I remember at that point, aside from my own kind of, feeling a little like, okay, new things. But an interesting thing happened with my mom. I had always been accused by teachers, and even my own mom, like in church or whatever, had been like, stop fidgeting, stop fidgeting, stop fidgeting. Close your legs, cross your legs, keep them together. Why can't you sit still? After that moment in time, my mother never, ever told me to stop fidgeting again. She completely all of a sudden understood that, you know, her daughter had been fidgeting all these years because her back hurt, and there was a medical reason that her back was hurting. And she instead just tried to find ways that, you know, would help. You know, even if it was just, well, just talk to me. What do you need? What do you think that you need? And it was definitely a shift in perspective. Teachers stopped telling me to stop fidgeting as well. Pretty sure my mother had a conversation with them being like, I don't want to even like hear this, you know, for my daughter coming home. And it was a total shift in her. So I definitely feel like if my mother had known that I was an empath and had understood from the basic science as far as somebody else's emotional energy, right, that I'm basically acting as a magnet and I'm feeling this, and that feeling is a manifesting outward into emotions, whether it was being more agitated or more vocal, or, you know, getting angry or crying and being sad, etc. She would have understood more of what was going on, and she would have tried to figure out, okay, well, what do we need to do? And, you know, there was a sadness there about that for me, because I didn't find out I was an empath until after my mom had died. And so I never even got to have that conversation with her. I never even got to resolve those feelings and also provide, in a way, clarity for her to understand why her daughter was always so emotional. I'm going to talk a lot more about empath stuff in other videos, but I just wanted to talk today about, you know, can you be too emotional? Now, what I did find in my empath journey is that when you're having these, you know, a lot of these outbursts, a lot of these emotional things, and you feel like you're spiraling, and or you feel you're a little like, you know, inside, it's because you're not grounded as an empath. And it means that you're not doing things every day to specifically ground yourself, to center yourself, so that you can find a way to kind of control some of this residual energy that's bombarding you. And so when you're not doing that, that's when you start spiraling out of control. That's when you're feeling this excess emotional stuff. And I found that when I started implementing various grounding practices, both mentally and physical grounding, that my energy changed, my ability to control emotions I was either feeling for myself or emotions that I was feeling for other people, all of a sudden started to feel like I could control them in a little bit more structured manner. And I also could understand, oh, wait, is this me? Is this my energy? Oh, no, that's somebody else's. Okay. So you go through these experiences where you learn and, you know, you improve. And so if you find yourself in this state where you always feel like you're just too emotional, then what I would say is you need to start working on grounding practices. You need to start working on how to center yourself. Now, mental grounding you can do through meditation. You can do through verbally saying, you know, doing daily energy cleanses. It's something that I do. I literally will remove, you know, verbally remove other people's energy and send it back to them and reclaim my energy in a daily energy release. And then the other thing to do is to physical ground. And physical grounding is basically where you go outside and you are one on the earth. And you do that either walking barefoot, you can sit on the ground, but you have to make sure that if you're walking on the ground, you're not walking with like shoes on, like tennis shoes, because you're not grounding. Like if you're outside and you have tennis shoes on, the only thing you're doing is mentally grounding. You're not physically grounding. And there is a difference. So you've got biorhythms in yourself and biorhythms in the earth. And there are two components on the grounding with the earth. The first is there is a magnetic cycle, okay? And the more that you are actually touching the earth, you start to be in the biorhythm with the earth from a magnetic perspective. So if you've ever heard of magnetic therapy, right? what magnetic therapy is trying to do is basically align yourself in the same way that the Earth's magnetism is. All right. So it helps your cells kind of get back in order. The other thing that grounding on the actual Earth does is there are electrons all throughout the surface of the Earth. And when you have your body, if you have damaged cells in your body, a damaged cell actually has ejected its electron. Okay. So when you go on the Earth and you walk, you sit, whatever, these electrons will actually naturally kind of come into your body, since your organic matter, and it will try to find a cell that's missing an electron. And when it does, it reinserts itself into that cell, and then the cell starts to heal. From there, what happens is you start to physically feel better, like from the physical perspective. So there's two kind of components to the physical grounding that go into play there that will physically make you feel better. And when you do these two things, you will find that you're able to deal with other people's emotions better, your own emotions better, and also situations that normally would trigger you. You're able to deal with those from a clear head. When you feel in here a little like this, what happens is your mind gets distracted by this extra energy here, and you're kind of focusing on what's going on here, but trying to tamp this down. But when you feel calmer here, your head gets clear, and you're able to look at something a little bit more logically and a little bit less emotionally, and you're able to work through it and deal with that. So if you ever find yourself saying, am I too emotional? Or is my friend too emotional? The answer is no. However, maybe you need to incorporate some grounding exercises. So I hope that today has been helpful for you. And if you have any other questions about empaths or grounding, if you want any help with that stuff, I do instructions for empaths and beginners and how to kind of navigate that process and what you're going through, whether it's emotional responses, whether it's just the feelings of an empath, etc. You can reach me on my website at talktopallas.com. Definitely follow me on my website, subscribe to my channel for more stuff, as I'll definitely be putting more empath stuff on here. And otherwise, I hope you have a great day.